Okay. So hi.
Naomi, when are you actually moving?
We're starting now, Janice.
Oh, okay.
Um, so we're going to be looking at, again, still looking at Beruriah, but today I'd like to really make a little bit of an effort to combine it with the idea of the ethical wills. I want to go back a drop to let me share the screen with you. Um, okay, share the screen. I want to go back. And first of all, what I have not been good about acknowledging is I've had a lot of sources here about Bruria, but the one source that I totally forgot about, which is a fabulous source, is, and what's even nicer, it's in Word, so it's very easy for me to copy from it, is volume 2. It's called Bruria and Rabbi Meir, The Odd Couple, all right? A rabbinic life from Tezek. And so a lot of my quotations are really coming from there. So I really should acknowledge Noam Saxai-Zion, because I don't know if I used any of his material last week, but this week I'm certainly using a lot of material. And so I decided to go back one step, just also the two of you have not been here. We're not here last week. So we were looking a lot at the source of Rabbi Yossi, who when he's on the way to the journey. Then the question is, what was his journey? And there's a feeling there behind the journey when she abruptly, sort of showed off her knowledge, was he really wanted something, he really wanted to ask her something, and she's to a certain degree may have cut him short. Maybe he wanted to learn from this well-known scholar, all right? But then she sort of cut him off and insulted him and here you have the Hebrew here, Be'ezu derech nelech la'ir Lod, by what road should we go to the city of Lod, all right? Which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words perhaps, all right? And then she answers him, right? Galili Shota, stupid Galilean, right? Didn't the rabbi say, Al tarbesi chaim haisha, don't have long discussions, or don't, it's not clear if it means long discussions or don't even get involved with discussions at all. It's not clear, right? With a woman, right? Sue, would you agree with me that al tarbesi chaim isha doesn't necessarily have to mean long discussions? That it could even mean discussions at all, right?
Yep.
Yeah. From the context, people usually understand it as long discussions. And this is a quotation from Pirkei Avot. And she says, you should have asked more concisely which to load, be'ezu lelod, which would be 2 words, be'ezu lelod. Right. Now, it almost seems stupid. So the question is, what's going on here? And last week we looked to see what Rachel Adler had to say, so I don't have to repeat that here. But there are other people who have other things to say. And it's funny that they say it's 4 words. To me, it looks like 5 words, but okay. So apparently, Rabbi Yossi wanted to even, he didn't really say that much, right? By what road do we go to Lud? He didn't really say that much. So, and he made, this is the assumption here, that he may have wanted to get some knowledge, what's the weather like there, or, who lives there, or where can I get kosher food, right? In other words, maybe he had a whole bunch of questions, and he already, same, he already made it already concise, right? It got it into a few words, right? So, but Beruriah, instead of appreciating him, right, for those 4 words, that she says, no, you could reduce them to 2, right? And the commentary here is that Beruriah does not allow him to make an exception for her, right? Because she is a scholar or because he needs directions, right? So she holds him to even more exacting standard of counting every word when asking a woman for help. So in other words, this is a little bit more complicated than just a put down, all right? And so we looked at what Rachel Adler had to say, but the background here is that it's not only Beruriah who is impolite when studying. There's a whole background of rabbis studying, and I would even call it one-upsmanship, right? Um, it's a little bit, even if you think about the university. When I think back to my days at the university, there was always, one person, not me, one person whose hand was always raised, and very often it was a boy, by the way, a man. Um, and the teacher acknowledged, but you went to Barnard, Joyce, but right, but very often it was a man who, was, and the teacher acknowledged the men, because for whatever reason, more so than the women in those days, right? Which is interesting. I'm thinking.
No, but I taught at Yeshiva University, and the uh, terrible gossip was horrible. Always horrible, horrible.
You mean put downs for women?
Put down for colleagues.
Of everyone, right? By the way, so what you have a lot of it's funny we say it's a collegial attitude, right? Collegial in reality means anything but collegial, right? Everyone is saying
anything but collegial.
Right. Yet it's funny we do say collegial. That's really I had never thought of that before. Did any of you see that movie? It was called it wasn't a movie. It was a series. Just one that semester, one season. It was called The Chair.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Right? I just recently re-saw it on Netflix. I saw it was the second time, and everyone was snapping at each other, and everyone's out to get everyone else, and just so it's really, it's I think the word is ironic when we say collegial, right? If you think about it, no one thinks of it as being an ironical word, but it is. So what you have here is that in this so-called scholarly area, she actually is acting like the other rabbis, all right? If you have in the Talmud in Yoma 22b to 23a, you have this quotation. Any scholar who does not, right? Any scholar who does not take vengeance and bears a grudge like a snake is no scholar. What does that mean? That means you have to lash out. You have to lash out. Okay? In other words, if you keep it to yourself, you're not, you're doing nobody any favors. All right? So Beruriah, right, actually is, I'll go use the quotation from here, I can't pronounce the word, punctiliously. She's punctiliously urging a famous rabbi to obey because he's a famous rabbi, Rabbi Yossi, all right? And so she's sort of making fun of the whole tradition, but she's also part of it, right? And Ishai Rosenzweig, in an article that he wrote, The Rise and the Fall of Rabbinic Masculinity, writes that the most basic terminology of the house of study is that of war. The sages are shield bearers. They attack, they defend themselves from and defeat one another, right? Many rabbinic sources describe the agonistic atmosphere in the Beit Midrash, a place of winners and losers, anger, insults, and shame, and sometimes even physical violence. That is not the image we have of our sages, is it? But if you think about it, maybe now everything today falls into place. If we think about the insults between the Orthodox and the Reform, right? Anything they don't like, by the way, in Israel, a lot of people do not distinguish between Reform and conservative. To the average Israeli, anything new they'll call Reform. They just don't know, even though there is the word Masorti, they don't think of it that way. And everyone is everything. It's a real problem. I mean, we have not really made ourselves clear on the map. We may be growing, but we're not necessarily known. And so everything is reformy, right? So this may explain, if the Beit HaMidrash is a battleground, this will explain today all of the animosity between Jews and Jews, right? It's a little sad, but they're okay. So now we go on. Beruriah's chutzpah, right, is in rebuking rabbis and their students for not living up to their own standards, is manifest in another story where she intentionally shames an erring male student of Torah. Last week, I actually put this in. I don't know if it's a mistake or not because the source is very close to the first source. I don't know if this is the same, if it's a continuation of Rabbi Yossi's query. But anyway, what does she do? When he says something, she kicks him, right? She kicks him for his ignorance, all right? What is he doing? He says it in he talks or he says something in an undertone rather than out loud as a protocol for memorization, all right? By the way, I see that Marcia has joined us here, and she probably remembers, I certainly do, that we had to memorize things in our school, in Ramaz, right? Which was really torture because we didn't really understand what we were memorizing. And we had to, memorize swaths of it's not like we were told to memorize things from the book of Genesis. We were told to memorize things from the prophets, right? And also some abstruse poems by Shaul Chernyakhovsky, which I didn't understand at that time that he was very right wing. I didn't quite understand that. Today, of course, you know that. But the point is, the whole idea of learning things by heart. If you don't know it by heart, you don't know it. And there's something to that. On the other hand, if you don't understand what you're memorizing. So she kicks him, right, for his ignorance. And she says, isn't it written, ordered in all things and secure? A quotation from Samuel to 2 Samuel. If it is ordered in your 248 limbs, then it will be secure. In other words, if you totally, we discussed this a little bit last week, if you totally learn it in all of your limbs and all of you, then it will be secure. It will be memorized. Otherwise, it will. All right. The question he raises is why kick him? All right. Why kick him? So I love this quotation, right? Perhaps she invented this exegesis to make it easier for the student to recall it by associating it with a verse. And she reinforces this abstract lesson with a physical mnemonic, I think it's pronounced without the M, a physical mnemonic, a whack in the ass by a woman, which he will never forget. Okay, so his kick in the rear will help him memorize better. So, okay, I love that quotation. I couldn't resist it. For those of you who came in a little bit late, I just want to acknowledge that I'm taking a lot of my quotations from this collection by Noam Zachstein called Beruriah and Rabbi Meir, The Odd Couple, A Rabbinic Life of Temptation, Shame, and Suicide. Okay, and I'm using that a lot right today. So this is stuff that we sort of looked at last time, but I just wanted to add to it. And this is more or less where I left off last week. So before it says even continue from here, I'll take that off now. Anyone want to add something to all of this? I mean, it's let me just stop the share for a minute before we go on. Any questions, any comments? No? Okay. So I thought maybe what we should do is before we go on, since I see 6:20, we have plenty of time to go on, but I thought, what kind of questions, if just based on this, if Beruriah were writing an ethical will, right? Just based on this, first of all, who would she be writing her ethical will to? Let me actually, let me open up a new, and then we'll write it all down, right? Let me just share with you the empty screen right now. Okay, so let's call this prompts. Is that how you spell prompts? Yeah. Prompts for an ethical will for Beruriah. What, just based on what we've seen up till now, because I know you have other knowledge of Beruriah, but just based on this, what kind of things might she write, and who would be her audience based on what we've seen here?
I think her audience would be rabbinical students.
Right.
Okay. Rabbinical students, okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
And also the teachers?
Also the teachers. Okay. Teachers like who? Like whom?
The rabbis who are teaching the rabbinical students.
Of the rabbinical students. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else she would have to take into account? Should she mention anybody by name? Somebody who she may have insulted personally?
I don't know. It seems like there's an awful lot of them so far.
Okay. So, in other words,
Maybe all those I have insulted previously.
Well, I always wonder when I
name.
read the Beruriah stories, how much of it is she's being rude and insulting, and how much of it she's being ironic, saying, you guys have such a narrow world that, and in which case I don't think she would feel the need to apologize to people.
okay, you have such a, what did you say? Such
A narrow worldview
a narrow, okay, yeah.
and kind of egocentric in a way.
Right. Okay. So on the one hand, we're asking, is she being ironic? On the other hand, when she addresses the teachers, she's telling them, so again, so she's not apologizing, right? She's not, she's still on the attack, right? She's still on the attack. Do you think she might want to possibly apologize?
I feel very sorry for her. She is in a constant struggle, constant battle, constant.
Okay, for
Which
what?
side is winning?
A constant battle of what?
Of proving herself
Okay, proving herself as a woman or as a scholar?
as a scholar.
Well, I don't think you can separate the two.
Okay, and as a and
female
in particular,
scholars.
in particular,
Did she have more children after the two boys that
we
died?
haven't. Don't give us any what you call it, any
Spoilers.
Oh,
spoilers, okay, okay. We don't know at this point. We don't know if she has children. That we, in fact, it doesn't even say here. We don't even know that she's married to Rabbi Meir right, at this point. Okay.
Right.
So just based on these things, all right. So so imagine that she's on her, not on her deathbed, but imagine she has to give a speech. It's like going back to the chair, right? Remember, I really just saw it the other day. What I'm doing lately is I can't deal with the fact that I'm moving, so I watch a lot of Netflix every time I'm moving.
I know that.
So because of that, I really watched it a second time. And if you remember, the chair, I forget her name, has to stand up on the stairs and give some sort of a speech, and she's half drunk, all right? So and so whatever comes out of her mouth comes out of her mouth, but she doesn't really say anything. So if she should the question is, should she be defensive, right? In her ethical will, or offensive? Would that be the word?
Aggressive.
Forthright.
Or forthright, right? Forthright. Okay. So, or a combination of both, right? Or a combination of both. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. So so we have the audience, all right. Let's see what AI will come up with. Okay. By the way, I already did one a long time ago, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I did one, but that was putting in all the information in. So I just want to do it point by point because I think it's more relevant.
You're an addict now.
No, I'm an addict, but I think it's actually very interesting.
Yes, it can be.
It can be very. By the way, unfortunately, somebody actually left because of this, which is a little sad. But She didn't like the idea that I was, wait, I don't have to go into the chat. What am I trying to do? Remind me, I'm trying to open, right? I'm trying to open Chat GPT.
Mhm.
Why is it not showing up? I'll have to, okay. Chat GPT, okay. Right, okay, so let me share the screen with you. Share. Wait, no, I'm not sharing. Share. Okay. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
An ethical will for Beruriah using only the following prompts. Okay, let's see what they come up with. Or maybe I confuse them.
What is she?
Upstairs.
Okay, here we go.
Oh. Oh.
Well, I'll have you read it in a minute. Let's
Wow.
Yeah.
oh,
I that's three
okey-doke.
O's. 3 for O.
Wow.
Okey-doke, yeah, okay. So,
Yeah.
Toby, would you like to read this? Should I
Sure,
make it bigger?
sure.
I'll make it
Could
bigger?
you make it a little bigger? That would be just great.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
To my students who would be rabbis and to the teachers who form them, I write across time, not to settle accounts, but to leave you with a way of standing in the world of Torah. Receive this not as a verdict on my life, but as a map drawn from its tensions.
Cool.
First, to those I have wounded with my words. I know that sharpness can cut more deeply than truth requires. I have spoken swiftly, sometimes with irony that concealed more than it clarified. I have mocked error when patience might have taught more. If my speech diminished you, rather than the falsehood you carried, I ask forgiveness. Do not mistake this for retreat. An apology is not a renunciation of rigor, it is an insistence that rigor serve life.
Wait, what does that mean?
It means you use the apology in a positive way. We learn from our mistakes.
Okay, okay, good. All right, good.
Was I ironic? Yes, often. Irony was a shield and a spear. It protected me in rooms where my learning was doubted before it was heard, and it pierced complacency that mistook tradition for possession. But irony is a dangerous tool. It can awaken the mind and it can harden the heart. Learn when to lay it down.
Mm.
To those whose world I called narrow and who felt attacked, I still believe that a narrow worldview impoverishes Torah when the tradition is used to fence out voices, experiences, and questions. It shrinks. On this I will not apologize. Yet I will say this: attack ideas without erasing people. A teacher's task is not to win, but to widen.
Wow.
This is very important, okay?
Yeah.
Because
Know
this,
this.
wait, this goes against the tradition of, right, of the battlefield that we saw earlier, the
Right.
battlefield of studying. Okay, go on.
Know this about me because it will be true of some of you. I live in constant battle to prove myself as a scholar, and more sharply as a woman scholar. Every question carried the weight of representation. Every mistake was read as essence, not error. From this came my defensiveness, my urgency, my refusal to soften my claims. If you inherit this struggle, do not romanticize it. It forges strength, but it also exhausts the soul.
Wow.
Oh boy. Okay.
Wow.
What's
Yeah.
your wow here? I agree with your wow. What's your wow?
Yeah. Wow is a double O.
Yeah, this is really, this is a really, this goes against really the fact that, we're yeah, when I think about it today, I mean, there's the lack of discourse, right? And that everyone is shouting against each other all over the world, right?
Nobody listens.
Nobody listens.
And no one listens, and it's exhausting. I mean, this is really, it's really amazing. And this is AI. Let's not forget that. I mean,
and I don't think we said this so clearly, if we said it at all.
No, I agree with you. Go on. So what do I leave you?
So what do I leave you? The students love Torah enough to argue with it, and yourself enough to be changed by it. Do not confuse reverence with silence. If you are marginalized, speak, not to prove you belong, but because Torah belongs to you.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To teachers.
Wait. Actually,
okay.
This is actually very important because today, I don't know if you remember, but in Israel, a couple of years, it's quite a few years, it's not just a couple of years, many, many years ago, probably in the late 80s, early 90s, Sue, remind me, I think you had the whole idea of taking back the books, right? The idea that the books don't necessarily belong to the rabbis, but they belong to us as well. And then you started having the secularization of studying Jewish texts and everything. What's her name? Was briefly a Knesset member. What was her name? I forget her name.
Levi? Is that
Aliza
Levi? Oh no, you're thinking Calderon.
Ruth Calderon.
Yeah.
Ruth Calderon was very, very well known for that, and she was briefly in the Knesset as well. I mean, which was a mistake. I mean, for her, unfortunately. But I mean, politics is, and scholarship don't necessarily go together. Okay, but
anyway, was actually radical for giving a Talmud lesson in the Knesset.
Right,
as a female, and that was like really wow.
Right, unbelievable, absolutely. So today, this whole idea of so the Torah, not to prove that you belong, but because Torah belongs to you. This is a very important message to all of us, right?
Yeah.
In other words, we should speak up. We should not be cowed by those people who are teaching us. Okay, go on.
The teachers, examine whom you hear easily and whom you require to be brilliant just to be admitted. Ask whether your standards are gates or walls. Mm-hmm. Remember that cultivating scholars is also an ethical act.
Wow.
That's again, and very, very important. In other words, don't undermine your students or don't steal their work. and present it as yours. And by the way, if you think about it, when you have 6 or 7 authors, on an article, right? And very often the person who has done all the work's name is last.
The last one, or not at all.
Or not at all. Right. Okay, go on.
As for tone, defensive or aggressive, choose neither as a home. Learn the discipline of forthrightness. Speak plainly, argue fiercely, apologize honestly, defend dignity, not ego, attack injustice, not the vulnerable. Let your learning be bold enough to disrupt and humble enough to repair.
Wow.
Okay, this is amazing. On the other hand, to me, it's a little bit what we call gobbly, sort of. It's a little, but okay. The message is important, but it's the way it's stated. You could tell it's AI to a certain degree. Okay, this is my will.
This is my will, that Torah be made larger by those who enter it, that argument be for the sake of heaven and humanity, and that those who were once forced to fight for their place teach the next generation how to stand without armor.
Okay, so this was basically, I see that Geraldine just came in. This was just basically what we put together. We had some prompt questions, right? And these were the prompt questions that we had just on one small item that we looked at. We could also ask, if we wanted this to be a more scholarly, we could ask GPT something like this. Can you substantiate
Right.
this ethical will with some quotations from Talmudic sources,
Oh my God.
right? Or substantiate and illustrate, or no, is that a good question?
I think it's overwhelming.
What about validate?
Validate, okay. Can you validate
Yeah.
this ethical will by inserting some quotations from Talmudic sources about Beruriah, obviously, about Beruriah. Okay, let's see what they have to do here. All right, it'll be very interesting to see it, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do a little bit more studying about Beruriah. I really decided to
So fast.
With echoes of the Talmud.
Wow.
here we go. Okay, so we have here two quotations. All right. When my husband, we haven't looked at that, so we're going to look at that soon. Okay. When my husband prayed for sinners to be destroyed, I rebuked him, saying, "Let sin cease," not sinners. We're going to look at that. Precision of language is moral work. Torah that confuses people with their failures commits violence of another kind. Okay, we don't really know exactly what she's saying. All right, and then here, this we did see last week. All right, a narrow world empowers vicious Torah. When tradition is used to silence voices, it betrays itself. The sages testify that I learned 300 laws from 300 teachers in one day. We saw that last week. All right. Torah was never meant to be guarded by a single gatefoot. All right. And okay, so they basically, okay, we're not going to do that. Well, we could also ask it with and make it more. Okay, I'm going to save this. All right, save the whole thing, and let's go on. We'll call this document 1. All right. So, okay. Save as. What should we call it?
Ethical Beruriah.
What?
Ethical will of Beruriah.
Number 1.
Number 1, right? Exactly. First ethical will of Beruriah. Okay, Doe. Okay, stop share. Okay, so let's go back to studying a little bit. We still have time, and we don't have to do an ethical will on that as well, but there were certain hints that we just got here. So let me share the screen again. Share screen. Okay, so here we have, this is, we stopped off at this particular image last time, and now we have, two things, okay? Two things. Let me just put all of you down here. Okay. So okay, first I should explain what the Tosefta is. The Tosefta parallels the Mishnah, and very often the Tosefta says things that are in the Mishnah, or sometimes has things that are is not in the Mishnah. And it's less known than the Mishnah, and usually what was in the Mishnah ended up being in the Talmud, whereas things in the Tosefta did not necessarily make it into the Talmud. So these are sources which we may not necessarily know. So, so we have here in two sources from the. They're out of order, so I'll read the first one, which is Baba. No, actually, there's some different tractates. All right, so one is Baba Kama, and the other one is Baba Metzia. So, Marcia, you want to read it? An oven?
An oven? Okay, this is Tosefta Kalim.
Yeah.
An oven which was plastered in ritual purity and became impure, from whence can it be purified? Rabbi Chalafta of Kfar Hanania said, I asked Shimon ben Hanania, who asked the son of Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion, and he said, when they move it from its place. But that's his daughter, Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion's daughter, said, when they dissemble its parts. When this was told to Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, he said, his daughter said it better than his son.
Okay. So Beruriah is the daughter of Tradion, Hanania ben Tradion, right? Who has I don't want to give you spoilers, but has a terrible, tragic ending. And so Yehuda ben Baba, who's not a member of the family, when he heard this, okay. So in other words, one rabbi says they move it from place to place, and the other says it's when you dissemble the parts. So which actually makes sense if you think about it, all right? Right. So if something is impure, and if you think about when you get things ready for Passover, right? Many a stove has been ruined because people have dissembled the parts and don't know how to put them back again, right? Yeah. So, okay. And here, now you want to go on, read the next one from Caleb from Baba. Yeah.
Oh, regarding a door bolt, Rabbi Tarfon declares it impure, but the rabbis declare it pure. And Beruriah says, one removes it from this door and hangs it on another on this Shabbat. When these comments were brought before Rabbi Yehuda, he said, Beruriah said it well.
Okay. So these are statements that we have which are showing that she is correct in her views and even intellectually superior to these people, all right? She's not confrontational here, right? No. She's simply, is simply part of the discourse, right? And they're complimenting her. Now, is it necessary for them to compliment her? That's an interesting question. Are they being, what's the word, condescending?
Well, in the first one, there's two opinions given, and he's acknowledging which of the two he thinks is better. So there it's kind of necessary. The second one, there's only one opinion being given, so, but he's accepting her opinion. He doesn't say, I need to go for a second opinion.
Well, right. He doesn't say, actually, he doesn't really say he accepted it. He just said, she spoke well. It could be.
Right. Okay, meaning her argumentation is fine. Yeah, that's a point. Yeah. Right. In other words, the question is, of course, I'm not a Talmud scholar, and we'd have to ask Talmud scholars, is this condescension to a woman? It's like, like your daughter comes in, a little, a 7-year-old kid comes in and says something very smart, and, we all parade her and say, oh, isn't she cute or whatever. But if you think about it, they're putting her in her place at the same time, right? It's the daughter. We're complimenting her, but she's still only a daughter or even a son or whatever. But the point is that, I don't know. I don't have an opinion. We're just asking you what you think about. What are your thoughts about something like that?
Well, here there's a bunch of rabbis discussing it. One asked the other. In our previous discussion, it was just her. There was just a single opinion, and there was nobody else confirming it or saying, yes, she spoke well, or you have a brilliant daughter. This shows that she's part of the accepted train of discussion.
Right. So, I agree with you. The question I'm only asking is, are they being respectful?
Oh, it's a condescension.
Or are they being kind? I don't know. I don't
know. We weren't there. The tone and the language is very important. We don't know how important it is.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's look at we still have time for this one. Okay, so this one is a very well-known one, and this is the person, whoever, AI made reference to this one here. This was the one with the sinners. So Reese, you want to read this? Certain brigands?
Okay. Certain brigands who were in the neighborhood of Rabbi Meir used to trouble him greatly. He prayed that they die. Beruriah, his wife, said to him, "On what do you base your opinion? Because it is written, 'Let sins cease.' Is sinners written? Rather, sins is written. Furthermore, cast your eyes to the end of the verse, and they are wicked no more. Since sins will cease, they will be wicked no more. So pray that they repent and be wicked no more." He prayed for them, and they repented. A certain Sadducee said to
Wait. Let's stop there. So what's going on here? What is she showing here?
That it shouldn't be the people, it should be their actions.
Okay. By the way, does this sound familiar in terms of today?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they troubled him and he wanted them to die
Right.
is rather
That's
Extreme.
the world,
extreme
right?
instead of giving them a chance to repent.
Okay, so he comes off here as the intolerant one
Extremist.
here.
Yep.
Okay. But she's not she's not criticizing him on that. She's criticizing him on something else, something much deeper, actually. What's the difference between sinners and sins?
Right.
Actions and evil people, right? Evil actions or evil people. Does this sound a little bit but like pop psychology today? Separating,
Right.
Action from the person who actually does it.
Right.
You call someone a perpetrator, right? A perpetrator.
Right.
And we're quite clear about that, right? Yeah. We don't say that a perpetrator is something else, right? Perpetrator is someone who does something evil. So, but she's sort of breaking it down, and she's saying, evil. I think there's a problem with this, right?
Well, we don't know what they did to him, but they just troubled him greatly. It doesn't say they were murderers. They were to trouble him greatly is very vague. But it could be a case like when you talk to a toddler and you say you did something bad. I'm not saying that you're bad, but you did something naughty. The question is, how bad were the actions that they did? How were they really sins, or they were just annoying behaviors?
Okay,
we don't know. We don't know.
Let's say somebody plays music, very loud. Your next door neighbors, right?
After 11 o'clock.
After 11 o'clock, right? I don't know whether it is in California, but in our town in Omaha, after 11 o'clock,
Yeah, right. So it doesn't say. And it doesn't say he tried to
talk to them.
He didn't go out and talk to them, right?
He
exactly.
just let them die, and the problem is gone. But then you have another problem, right?
Which, by the way, is very human, right?
Yeah,
it's very human, right? When somebody's annoying you and you're suffering and whatever, I wish So she is chastising him to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
And saying there's a difference between evil actions and evil people, and she's implying that you can if there's no more evil in the world, the people won't be wicked. But all right, so pray that they repent, and they did. Okay. Isn't this a little bit? I don't know. I have a problem. I've always had a problem with this. It's a show of brilliance, On the other hand, I think it's a very naive view of evil.
Right.
And don't forget, God created evil, right? He created evil along with the good. So I have a problem with this, all right? Yet this is always quoted to show how, first of all, how she's, sort of smarter than him and even more compassionate, right? Do you agree, by the way, that she's compassionate here?
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to her other actions.
Well, even also here, she would forgive the sinners when they stop sinning, right? But it's a little bit naive to think that there won't be evil in the world anymore. So for me, that's a little problematic. Okay, and now we go on and pay attention. A certain Sadducee said to Beruriah. So a Sadducee would be a person who is not one of the, in the rabbinic, very often the Sadducees and the Pharisees had arguments among themselves, right? And so if a Sadducee says something, it's already suspicious from the rabbinic point of view, okay? I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, so I don't know if it actually says Suzukim. It could also possibly be a person who is an outsider or somebody from a particular sect. So I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, so I don't know what it actually says. So go on reading.
Okay. A certain Sadducee said to Beruriah, "It is written, sing, O barren one who did not bear. Because she did not bear, should she sing?" She said to him, "Fool, cast your eyes to the end of the verse where it is written, for the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her that married, says the Lord. What then does barren one who did not bear mean? It implies that you rejoice, sons of the assembly of Israel, who resemble a barren woman who did not bear sons of Gehenna like you."
Okay, till we get to that last phrase, right, where she's basically cursing him, right? Gehenna is like hell, right? Gehinnom, right? In other words, because don't forget, he's a Sadducee. So a Sadducee is going to end up bearing sons of Gehenna, all right? So what is she? It's the same, it goes. It's together. Obviously, the rabbis see that this is something similar there. What is she basically saying? That why should you assume what? Why should people assume that a barren woman, right? The Sadducee, right? The Sadducee is saying to her, right? Single barren who did not bear. Because she did not bear, should she sing? Right? What is he saying? There's a contradiction between being happy and being barren. Right? He's questioning that there's something wrong with the passage from Isaiah. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but I actually wrote a midrash about all of this years ago, which is why I think that I took this article from. Let me just see. No, it's not. I'm pretty sure that because I can't underline this. I took this from a scholarly article by Michal Bar Siegel Asher. I'll show you the article afterwards. But this is just a quotation. I'm trying to understand this. So what does she say? First of all, first word.
She puts him down.
Fool.
What's the first word she says? A fool, right?
Fool.
Okay, we've seen that before. Fool, right? Now, are they trying to imply that Beruriah was saying to Rabbi Meir that he's a fool? Right? By juxtaposing these two texts together, right? And then she said, no, but look what it says.
Wait, but is she talking to Meir or to
husband?
the Sadducee?
No. She's talking to the Sadducee.
Sadducee, okay.
But you have these two texts that are together, right?
Yeah, but they could be together because both times she says you have to look at the verse to the end.
Yeah.
Right. right? That good. So that's another possibility, right? So we have two verses where you have something at the beginning and you have something at the end. Very nice. Okay. So there could be two reasons for this. That, but also because she is reacting sort of in the same way, right? Now she's not going to call her husband fool, but is she making a fool of him? I don't know. Interesting. Right? And then she's saying for the children of the desolate, this is at the end, the children of the desolate one, the barren one, will be more than the children of her that married. In other words, somehow or another, this barren woman is going to end up having more children than others, right? Which is interesting. By the way, the barren one is a stand-in for Israel. You have to realize that it's a metaphor here. The barren one is Israel, not an actual woman, but it sounds very much like a woman.
Right.
So, and in the midrash that I wrote years ago, I had it being Miriam was the barren one, right? But I also like the idea that the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her that married. I think this is actually a very interesting argument for those who decide not to have children. There are a lot of people today, I don't know how many among Jews, but certainly among a lot of educated women, there's a lot of people who have decided not to have children. Does that mean that what does that mean?
Well, but they often didn't choose to be barren either.
Okay. But sometimes they do choose to be barren. In other words, sometimes women will, right?
Right.
And notice that here the implication is to have children, you have to be married, right?
Right.
I think it's interesting that, that this is a possibility here. I'm wondering what she actually thinks when she says this, all right? But then she goes into what does it mean? Right? And then she has here a curse, right? Barren one who did not mean it replies that you idiot, you fool, right? Right? You should rejoice. In other words, the assembly of Israel, right? The children of the desolate one. The assembly of Israel will have children, right? And they're not going to have sons of Gehenna like you. In other words, we, the rabbinic families, right, the Pharisees, we're going to have lots and lots of children, and our children will succeed, right? And that's why we rejoice. We're not going to be like you fool, who are going to have sons of who will end up in hell. Right? It's very interesting that you have these two things going together, right? For whatever it's worth. Okay, so I think we may come back to this again next week. Let me just indicate where I stopped here. 1 minute. Let me just insert a text so I know where we are. Insert. And then if anyone has any comments, I'll be happy to hear them. Stop. Stopped here. Okay.
Cool.
What's cool?
How you
But
did
there were
stop
women
here.
who were married who were also barren.
Right. Plenty of them, right?
And many people go through, expensive, difficult procedures,
right,
so that they can have children.
right.
Right.
So
Today, yeah.
Today.
Right. It's still an issue. And it's interesting the way it's brought up, right? You can really talk about barrenness and, but why there's something of her sharpness here, right?
Right.
She doesn't what I was sort of trying to say is and maybe I should have put the two texts, one in one column and the barren one in the other, is maybe by the rabbis putting those two texts on this one right after the other, they're trying to say this is Beruriah's style, right? And even though she comes off as, very positive, right? Sinners, there's no such a thing as sinners. There's this thing, sins, right? And then in other words, people are not innately evil, which, by the way, we know there are some people who are innately evil. We call them psychopaths, right? And there are people like that.
Yeah.
There are, right? There are. And then when she curses this, the Sadducee, it's quite clear that, she's sort of putting him down. But again, pointing out that there's a contradiction in the text, but the contradiction is resolved.
Right.
So I think it's very interesting. Anyway, anyone have any other comments? Yeah.
Also, I mean, it's Talmudic study or development is, there's always a conflict between two scholars about a point of view or an issue, and sometimes the issue isn't resolved at all. And she doesn't have that. It's her opinion, her study, mention of the husband maybe, but it's her. And maybe her style would be a little less caustic, because she doesn't have that partnership in study that is pushed.
Okay, that's interesting. In other words, she is actually being deprived, perhaps, of
the study tradition, of the learning tradition.
She doesn't have a study partner in the way that men do.
She doesn't have a chavruta. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that, which, by the way, here I'll share something, personal with you. It's funny the way these hands suddenly come up there. What would I try to? Yeah. So
You studied with Mike.
I had Mike as a chavruta partner, but not really. It's not as if I sat with him. He really had chavruta partners. I mean, all the rabbis, even before before Corona, it would be in person, and then later through Zoom. And he actually studied with people, 2 or 3 times a week on Zoom, and he had regular study partners. I never really had that. I never had a chavruta partner. And so I had to come to things on my own, right? So it's different. It's different. There's always a sense of, I'll share something personal with you. There's always a sense, maybe not so much today, but certainly in the beginning, a sense of insecurity. Like, who am I to, and I must say to Mike Schut, to his credit, right? And blessed memory, the arguments that we had, he never would put me down. He would always, it was not condescending. It was always very, respectful, and he listened, and sometimes he agreed with me, and sometimes I agreed with him. In other words, especially on things having to do with women's issues. I mean, that was, and people in the synagogue would laugh at, they would actually laugh at us, look at them arguing in the synagogue over, but I that argumentation, as we just pointed out, is part of learning, right? And so that's why I asked about the condescending tone. Were the rabbis putting her down, pointing out that she's a woman, and even though she's a woman, she has smart things to say? Or was it just matter of fact? I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's both. It was a very new experience for them. And we spent so much time on her because she was unique, as far as we know. Who knows what they deleted from the text? Right.
There are other women, there are hints. And next week I'll start, actually, I had underlined something to read to you. So next week, maybe I'll start with that, which has nothing. It's from that book, Noam Sion's book, which is Talmudic context of Beruriah's witty rebukes. So next week I'll share that with you. Let me just actually put it in here. Next week, start with this. Whoops. Start with this. Okay, let me just put it in red so I know that I am going to be doing that. And somebody remind me if I forget, okay?
By passing the buck.
Yeah, okay. So I'll see you guys next week. Is this okay that I'm really focusing on one person in depth?
Yeah.
She's
Yes.
definitely worthwhile.
Yes,
to-
definitely,
And
definitely.
we're having the modern midrash part a little bit because we are writing a midrash in the end, with that ethical will. So we are, I still could call this modern midrash to a certain
Well, it's now. We're doing it now.
Yeah,
So it's modern.
and it's modern, right?
The language is important.
Right. So, okay. So I'll see you next week. And good that Geraldine, you were able to join us. I hope all is well. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Naomi.
Bye.
Good job.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.